Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action.
Neurodiversity in Everyday Life with Brent Sopel. I have a guest for you today that you are going to just flip over. His story, his wisdom, and who he is as a man. Brent Sopel has a Stanley Cup win, and I'm a new hockey fan in about the last 10 years. And so I really appreciate the skill of that sport. And it's like, they don't just have a short season, it's long. So he's worked really hard. He's also overcome a lot of difficulties that he didn't even know were a thing for so long. So this man has great wisdom about what it's like to live in a body with neurodiversity and what the consequences have been by not being found out early enough, not being told what to do to cope early enough. And then, of course, what he's doing now to rectify that situation in our world. So, Brent, thank you for coming on Someone Gets Me. I'm so delighted that you're taking time out of your life to share with us today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so see, everybody that I know knows you because of hockey. And I have a friend of mine who has taught me all about hockey. So now I understand it. She's from New Jersey and, I'm from Florida. So we're football people. And so when the Lightning came, I was at the very first Lightning game and I have a puck from the first game. I understand that's a big deal. I didn't know it was a deal, but it was a deal, right? Absolutely. And so when I was so excited when I got a chance to meet you because I'm like, that is an amazing sport that I never understood when I was younger. Anyway, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about, I digress. We're here to talk about how it's been for you living with dyslexia, living with a different kind of neurology, neurodiversity, we call it, and share with people starting kind of in the beginning, because you had trouble before you actually found out what it was, right?
Yeah. Again, I appreciate having me on. Dyslexia, we're born with the right brain wired differently. So I always say we struggle longer, harder, and deeper than anybody because we're born that way. So we struggle from that first time we grabbed that book. So yeah, I've been struggling since the day I was born. Your main reading area is grade 3 and 4, and I was reading at a grade 4 level in high school.
Wow. So, yeah.
I didn't get diagnosed with dyslexia until I got my one of my daughters tested when she was in grade 2. I was 32 years old.
Right. That happens to a lot of the parents I work with, and a lot of the adults that are gifted and neurodiverse I work with, is they don't find out about their own situation until their children get diagnosed. And it's like, wait a second, I have that too.
Yeah. And last night I heard 40 million adults have it, 2 million know it.
Right. That feels like it goes with what I see all the time. And I also see it in other areas of neurodiversity, like ADHD and all other things where the adult doesn't realize they've suffered with it their whole life. And then their kids get diagnosed and it's like an epiphany. So what kind of emotion did you feel when you realized, wait a second, I have dyslexia and that's why I've struggled all these years?
Yeah, so obviously go back to the ADHD, 30% of dyslexics. I have ADHD too. So, I got that dysgraphia, the writing portion to calculus. I got the whole thing, but I was later in my NHL career. So I think it was 32, 33. Got my daughter. I just ended up worrying about my daughter. I had gone so long thinking I was dumb, but also I wasn't in the real world. What I mean by that, I was playing a sport. I wasn't emailing. I wasn't doing that kind of stuff. So I never focused on myself. It was just kind of, there was something there. So maybe I wasn't dumb, but that was it. Just turned my attention to her because I was still playing hockey. I ended up playing hockey for another 5, 6, 7 years after that, and didn't realize what it all really meant until I did enter the real world because hockey, we have video, not typing emails, not doing that kind of thing. So I'm obviously being a visual learner, we're watching videotape, putting things on the whiteboard, things that, is what I needed, thank goodness. But it was really a tough moment to walk in that real world, again, at the age of 40 with learning disorders.
Right. The learning disorders that you didn't even like really understand what they've done. So let's back the time up a little bit when you were younger and you're struggling with reading and writing and concentration, all that, and nobody's telling you that it's a thing and you're having a hard time. How did you cope with that when you were a young kid? Like, did you get introverted? What did you do like to make it through?
If I didn't have hockey, I would have been dead, years ago. I always say you go to school for 8 hours and our self-esteem just goes right through the tank. And that is the number one problem with dyslexics because you're born that way. So as soon as we get that first book, we're already struggling, and my mom, my stepmom, my dad did most of my homework. Do I have a high school diploma? Yeah. Does my education take me past grade 8 of knowledge? No, they passed me because of who I was. And I hated every second going to school. And every second I was playing hockey because that was the only thing where again, it's not a sport, not a job at that point in time. It was my self-esteem booster.
Right. And so hockey is such a visual, physical sport. So it kind of fed into where your natural abilities were without all the struggle that you experienced in school all day long.
I went as far as and did what I did because I had dyslexia. Obviously, we've got to work harder. Most of us are harder workers than anybody. So that applied to hockey. I was never the most skilled, but I always worked harder than anybody. But the one big thing is my spatial awareness. Take a look at 50% of NASA are dyslexic. I knew where guys were going. My anticipation, was off the charts. I was always rated one of the slowest skiers in the league, but I had an idea where they were going before they did. So, I always say, if you have money, dyslexia is a gift. If you don't have money, it's a curse. And my sport took me as far as I did. I'm blessed to have that, to be able to have a platform to talk about dyslexia and try and bring it to the forefront where it needs to be.
Right, exactly. And I think that the way sports really feed into us and your ability to know where somebody's going to go before they are, in my world, we call that intuition. And we call that is a physical and spiritual giftedness. And dyslexia is positively correlated with intelligence, even though there's a misnomer and people might feel bad about themselves. Everybody I know with any form of dyslexia, it has a gifted IQ or higher. It's just a different learning strategy. And so you just, you found a sport and an outlet that you could intuitively and use your natural giftedness to compensate and to offset for this other situation over here. Thank God you found hockey, right?
And that's the biggest thing is, yes, I agree with you. We're always on the higher end of the IQ, but 50% of us are in prison, and the world is because we don't have that out. It's not the understanding. The understanding isn't there. Thank God I did have hockey. If I didn't, you're always thinking, oh, I'm that kid, I'm dumb. The self-esteem aspects, when you struggle. But yeah, we have some amazing gifts, and we thought, anticipation in hockey. Mine was off the charts. It's just having these conversations so people have the understanding at a younger age that it is a gift, and you have to get through this tough time and understanding, the earlier diagnosis, the earlier understanding of what it is, then it turns into a gift. The longer it goes, in my mind, is when it turns into the negative side of things because you can't get yourself out of it.
Right, because you don't know what it is, and you're walking around thinking I'm somehow inherently flawed, when it's not a flaw. But if someone doesn't help you learn and understand about it, and here you are growing up your whole life, and you don't have an understanding of what's happening with you until you're an adult, and so that is really profound in the way that happens, And so I'm so glad that you had hockey to keep you going through.
Yeah,
so
thank goodness I wouldn't be here today if I didn't.
Right, and you're doing a lot to make the world aware of dyslexia and aware of the situations and aware of what's going on. And you've also doing a lot of work in your own life to help it work really well. What I'd like to talk about is I know that I watched a video that you've done, and so I kind of did my homework here, and I would love to talk to you a little bit about when you got out of the NHL and some of the struggles you had, and what did you do to help create your new life, your life where this is now your mission? Like, how did you make that transition from a professional, very successful athlete to like the real world, which is not so friendly all the time?
Yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And, I didn't enter the real world, like I said, till I was 40 years old, going to school, moved away at 16, playing junior, turned pro. It's a different life. Living in the public eye, not writing emails, playing a sport. Most of us wake up in the morning, kind of ramp our day up, and then at night, we got to go down. Well, we're the opposite. At night, we had to ramp up. So, what it did to the body and surgeries, and then just have the door shut on my life that I did for 40 years with no resources. I turned to drugs and alcohol in a heavy way.
Wow. And so obviously you're still alive. So that means you found a way to get on the other side of the drugs and alcohol. So what happened?
Thank goodness I had an intervention. People threw me in rehab, and I've been sober over 5 years. And I always tell people it's easier for us to go down that path because we struggle. It's when you got to make that tough decision, it's easier to go the negative way because that's all we know. It's an everyday occurrence for us. So I was burying my feelings into. I got divorced after my career and needed to find a job. Nobody hired me. Who I am, I'm worthless. I got nothing. It was just one thing after another. So I had to get sober to be okay with who I am, and that's when the foundation, come into play. And my purpose was found, finally when I was able to see life, differently and sober.
Right. So you could clear up and say, okay, there's something bigger going on here that I can do. And I think about it and I go, okay, so hockey helped you cope with not knowing what was wrong with you, so to speak, when you were younger and that low self-esteem and feeling terrible. But when hockey ended, that was like the invitation in a kind of odd way to let the real Brent show up and be a voice for something that most people don't know much about.
I always say, I never want a kid to feel the way I do every day. That's all. Yeah. Yes, I completely agree. It can be a gift, but right now I think it's more of a curse for a majority of the 1 in 5, 20% of the population, because there's not the understanding there that needs to be, not the education of what it is and how we learn and how we think. And, when you're in grade 4 and grade 5, in high school, you're just trying to fit in you can't fit in when you can't do the simple things.
Right. And it really erodes your self-esteem and your any kind of confidence, and then adds to the self-doubt. And so then it's a cascading issue from there. So for everybody who's listening or throwing around the word dyslexia and neurodiversity, I'm going to ask Brent, what is dyslexia? Give everybody the definition from someone who lives with it operationally, like what, because a lot of people throw that word around. And you know what I think? I think there's a lot of misnomers and a lot of misunderstanding because you can't see it. Yep. It's a real thing that can't be seen. And so from you to all the people listening to us, what are you dealing with?
And that's key. I always say this, and, if you're blind, you get more resources than we do. And because you can see it, so that's the hard part that we live with. The 3 words you hear is dumb, stupid, and lazy. Work harder. You're just lazy. Now you're just messing around. So the one, everybody thinks dyslexia is just flipping your B's and D's.
Right. Yeah.
And I say that is this very smallest percentage of it. Some dyslexics don't know their lefts from their rights. So kids trying to go on playing a sport and the coach tells them to go left, they go right, they get yelled at. It's that self-esteem. That is the biggest thing. It's just the simplest things. Like I said, you get a job if you're bad at math, but if you can't read, you can't get a job. For myself, if I got a business card on the table, I can't transfer it from here to my computer without messing up. So again, we're whiteboards wired differently. When it crosses over, that's where we get lost. If the word doesn't spell and sound the same, I won't get it. Names, could never remember names. There's just so many of these little things that people have no idea of, what goes on. And there's only one there for me. I can't spell it, I can't. And the biggest thing that I always talk about for boys and men is all dyslexics have an extra empathy chip. Mm-hmm. But in relationships, it is very, very hard. You'll find a lot of young dyslexics without friends because we think so differently. In relationships for guys, the extra empathy chip is very hard. Women don't like that. So there is so much more to it. And that's why, I always, I appreciate having me on. I'll always talk about it, because if it just hits 1 year, open one eye, the stats are staggering. Suicides have tripled in the last 10 years in teens. 90% of suicide notes left are dyslexic.
That right there is a profound understanding. And, I work and all my work is with the gifted and talented people who are neurodiverse in whatever way. And we all tend to be in the gifted world. We tend to be a very big voice to support people. And what I also notice is a lot of it is for the kids. That's great. But what about the adults, that made it to adulthood when nobody knew any better yet or explained it? And it's good that adults are starting to say, hey, hold on, let's grab the kids' hands and bring them forward and help them out. And so you have a foundation that you started that we're going to put the links to the show notes in so everybody can go check it out and support your foundation, because I think it's valuable. And tell us a little bit about how you started it. What inspired you to get involved on this level?
Again, go back to, when I got sober, I had to be okay with who I was to stay sober. And, yes, and that goes back to struggling. When you're reading at a grade 4 level in high school, I don't have a college degree, barely have I don't even say I have a high school degree. It's tough being a man at this age to fit in, if you want, per se, along those lines. So I started the foundation because I never want a kid to feel the way I do every day. And if we can diagnose this at a younger age, it can be a gift. Just like cancer, you want to find it in stage 1 rather than stage 4. So, that's where the foundation, comes into play. I care. I just, I've got a platform, and I think I might be the only one in the world with a platform telling you the raw truth.
Right.
There's not, there's a lot of ugliness that goes along. You just mentioned, suicides, to drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of negative things that go with this, and I'm not afraid to talk about it all. Managing money as a dyslexic is very hard. It's part of it. Just things that people have no clue. And if you don't have it, you'll never understand. So as a parent, if you don't really, your kid knows it. Knows you love them, knows you understand, but he really knows you don't understand. So again, the biggest thing is, the one message is you're not alone, because I'm right with you. And whenever you're in a battle, it doesn't matter, depression or anxiety, alcohol, you always think you're alone. So that's one tagline for the foundation is you're not alone. It's just to get the message out that you're okay. And, if I can make it, you can make it. And just to use my platform to share what dyslexia is and trying to bring it to the forefront. I always say cancer is 1 and 2, not all hereditary. Next thing is, dyslexia, and that's got on so many levels: drug and alcohol, mental health. It's got the biggest umbrella out there. Autism, what's it, 1 in 65 and not hereditary? So it's right there. It's the biggest thing ever. And it can be a gift. You're absolutely right. It's just, if I can get it to that platform where everybody has an understanding of what that is.
Right. And you said earlier, and I believe it to be true, that it shows up in different ways in different people. And it's not obvious. Like, you can't see it in you, and you're talking to me and you make perfect sense. And I've watched some of your films with you playing hockey. I've watched all this, like, because I knew you. Like, I'm like, okay, I got to go search this guy. And I love it. And I love watching your grace and your poise and your ability to just really knock really difficult things out of the park. So you would never know it. There would be no way anybody would know that you have dyslexia unless you told them, or how much it really affects your life.
And that's the biggest thing is don't judge a book by a cover. You have no idea what is in the inside. And, I tell teachers, there's such thing as a class clown or a bully. There's a reason why.
Oh yeah. It's very true. And I see it everywhere all the time. And I it's time that we started talking about the fact that there are major impacts on adults' lives as you suffered as a child for a long time. And like you said, if you didn't find hockey, you'd be dead.
Oh, 100%. I would have died years ago.
Right. And this opportunity to do good for people and support the young men and do the things you're doing would never have happened. And it's valuable. It's very, very valuable. And so I have a couple of fun questions for you. What do you do? What do you like to do for fun? Do you still play hockey? What do you like to do to have a good time in your life?
Not hockey, I'll tell you that. It hurts too much. The amount of surgeries and the titanium. I got screws and plates all over my body. So hockey isn't fun. It hurts. My foundation, for fun, I like golf, but really my foundation I want to be known, and legacy, I tell my kids, is the foundation, isn't hockey. Hockey has given me the foundation, but I want to remember for the foundation. So that's my fun. I live to help parents and kids just to know, see a smile and know where they're at. Because I can look at them and I know exactly what that feeling is.
Yeah.
The everything that goes with it, the more emotions that I have there than I ever had playing hockey. Hockey brought me more pain than good. Mm-hmm. I mean, it got me to my purpose, and what this is my foundation.
Right. It kept you alive long enough to get you to it. Right. Exactly. It's like, whoa, hold on a second. Yeah. And you just said about knowing what the parents and kids are going through because you feel it. That's where that extra empathy chip comes in, right? Like you can really connect with what that's like because you can tell by the look on their face because you have yourself experienced that, whatever that emotion is.
I got, God's given me some amazing gifts, and I counsel people around the world, and I can connect dots inside them without even them saying it. Like, how did you figure that out? It's just, it's a gift. It's almost, it's just short of mind reading, and the things that I can pull out of people because I've had every single thing ever happen to me. I always say, I'm here to change the world. That's what the documentary is called, because that's what I feel. And that's my purpose, is to help people on whatever level. And that empathy chip, I can walk by somebody and see it.
Yeah. Yep. Totally. I'm the same way. I can feel the energy before it that even happens. Yeah. And that documentary is really moving. And I watched it, of course, and I'm like, wow. And I usually don't watch all the way through any documentary because I don't have ADHD, but close. And I have all these intellectual things going on. And I'm like, okay, got the flavor. But yours, I had to go back again. Like I didn't have time for the whole thing. And I went back and started where I left off and watched it through the credits going, this is a really cool man. It's not just the hockey, not just the dyslexia, but you as a person, your authentic, real self is really a gift. So I just wanted to tell you that's my impression from watching and seeing you. And so I have another fun question.
All right.
What is your most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Memorable.
Yeah, memorable. Doesn't have to be good or bad, just memorable food where you go, oh man, that I remember that.
I've lived around the world. I lived in Russia for 3 years. So horse jerky to alligator. I've lived a lot of places. I've eaten a lot of things, been around the world, but I had alligator just recently. Most memorable. It probably would have been, I lived on a farm, so we used to kill our own cattle or chicken. So those are memorable for me because I worked to get it.
Yes. That's important. It's a whole different thing than going to the store and picking it up.
The process that goes into raising that chicken, all year or the cow or whatever it is. We ran out of milk. I'd have to go up to the neighbors a couple miles down the road and, have some warm goat milk from the goats. And, right. That's really what made me who I am is, coming up, being born on a farm and raised and, having to grind everything out every day.
Yeah. Well, so then when you were grinding in hockey and grinding in life, you already know what that looks like, because being raised on a farm is not for wimps.
Definitely not. That's definitely made me who I am. And I appreciate life, living it through a different lens like that.
Oh yeah, totally. I love it. I was racing sailboats, and so it was a different kind of thing. I wasn't on a farm, but it was a grind every day. Like we went to work really, really hard. It's a dangerous sport and all of those things. And I was the only girl at the time when I was younger doing it. And so it was kind of interesting. And I look back and I go, I'm really grateful for those lessons and having that sport, because I was so misunderstood growing up and things like that. And I was able to find something to dive into my sport, which then held me over like until I could get to be an adult and figure out who I was. So I think sports save a lot of us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's a self-esteem, but one thing I just tell everybody, don't ever why me. Every lesson, there's a lesson in lesson, whatever that pain is, it's gotten you here today. So you can never say why me, and exactly what we talked about is being the only girl going through, but that's brought you here today.
Yes, exactly. That's I like that. Buddha said it, when somebody said, why me, master? He said, why not you?
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Life's not easy, but there's a lesson in everything that comes in negative. You just have to be big enough to take a step back and find it.
Oh, that's cool. That's true. So before I ask you the last question of this interview, I could talk to you about all this forever, but I'm really appreciative of your time and your expertise here and your passion for getting goosebumps. But before I ask you your last question, is there anything that was on your heart you wanted to share today or that's coming up that you would like to share? I don't want us to close this interview without you feeling totally satisfied and complete with what you got to say.
No, I just, no matter what, whoever, listens to this, please share. You're not alone. No matter what your battle is, I've gone through pretty much every single battle, drugs and alcohol, like I said, suicides. You are not alone. It doesn't matter what that battle is. And that's the biggest thing. We all go through things. So you're not alone. Life isn't a white picket fence. That's for housewives. That's not reality. So, the biggest message is, they're not alone.
Oh, I love that. So your final question is the one I love asking people. And I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but I'm not sure. Right. And that is, if we were going to put a billboard up that the whole world was going to see with your quote on it, what would you put on that billboard?
Here to change the world.
Here to change the world. Yes.
Yeah, you're not alone. Those are the two things that I, all the time. And because you're not alone, no matter what you are, who you are. But, I've always believed, we talked about this earlier, I'm here to change the world. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, that's perfect. So maybe for you, we need to get one of those billboards that are lit up that can change the message, that turn. And so we can put here to change the world. You're not alone. I think we're going to do that for you,
like that.
And have it lit up so it'll have some punch to it. Right. I
love that. All right. Perfect.
You're the first person I have had that vision. I could just see it turning, going down the highway and seeing it turning with the lights, that's your billboard.
All right.
I'll
make some phone calls, see if I can work on that.
That's what it is. Oh, that's wonderful. I want to thank you for spending your time hanging out with me today and sharing your wisdom and your passion. And all of you who are listening to Brent, you can check out the show notes for links to his foundation, his YouTube channel, and every other way you can find him, follow him, contact him. And remember, you're not alone. As he says, I agree with that. So thank you, Brent, for being on the show with me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you. You are a rock star and you're here on purpose with a purpose. So until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, be well.
Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.